Welcome to our training for the Provincial Research Ethics Platform. Thank you for joining, and I look forward to sharing an introduction to navigating harmonized research ethics in BC. We hope this video provides you with the background and systems knowledge that you need and answers common questions before they come up. Let's get started. Here are the key topics that we will be covering: the landscape of harmonized research ethics in BC, and how and when to apply for harmonized research ethics approval. We will also touch on variables in the process, and you will learn a bit more about how you can get started on your own application in the platform and work with applications you are partnered on. Research Ethics BC is the evolution of the BC Ethics Harmonization Initiative, a project for institutions that were aiming to find a harmonized approach to research ethics review. It was intended to remove the duplication of effort by researchers, students, and faculty, as well as duplication in paperwork and filing for admin. Previously under the BC Academic Health Science Network, Research Ethics BC is now part of Michael Smith Health Research BC. Our aim is to continue the collaborative BC ethics process that we started. We want to push towards further reciprocity. This is where relationships are important and trust needs to come in. We would like to expand the use of the models outside of our partner organizations. To be clear, Research Ethics BC is not itself a research ethics board, and we do not conduct ethical reviews. Since 2016, when we launched the models we still use today, Research Ethics BC's connection to the research ethics boards in the province have grown to 22 institutional research ethics boards across British Columbia. We are proud to work with our collaborative partners to support our province-wide harmonized system of ethics reviews. Currently, only researchers within the Research Ethics BC network can submit their harmonized or multi-jurisdictional ethics applications through the Provincial Research Ethics Platform, or PREP. When is harmonized research ethics required? Harmonized research ethics review is for multi-jurisdictional studies where the jurisdictions are part of the Research Ethics BC network. Jurisdictions can include study team member affiliation, recruiting participants, using facilities, using charts or patient data, and recruiting staff. If you have a question about whether your research is eligible for harmonized review, contact us at Research Ethics BC. In designing the model for review, the aim was to be as collaborative as possible. Here is the model for minimal risk research. The research team is only submitting one application, and then one REB takes the lead in the review. We call them the Board of Record. They hold the main responsibility for the review process and do the heavy lifting. They consult and coordinate with the other REBs of the involved institutions to make sure that the local aspects of the research are considered. The research team then receives one unified request for changes and eventually one certificate of approval when all the provisos have been met. This is all delivered through an online platform. Here we have the review model for an above minimal risk study. It is almost identical to the minimal risk model, but it includes a full board meeting as part of the review process. Partner REBs are invited to join the meeting or post their local provisos, which are incorporated into the single review. As with the minimal risk model, there is only one application, one set of requests for changes, and eventually one certificate of approval. It's just the review process that differs. The Board of Record is determined by the factors we see here. It's the allocation and distribution of these four elements that establishes one REB as best positioned to lead the review process. For example, the board who will recruit the majority of the participants, or who makes up the majority of the research team, or who has the membership expertise. The Board of Record determination is built into the platform through an algorithm. We will point out where the determination happens as we cover how to start and submit an ethics application in the system. The Provincial Research Ethics Platform, which we call PREP, was launched in 2018 and is housed in the UBC Research Information System, or RISE. You will hear many people refer to PREP and RISE synonymously. Because PREP is hosted on a UBC system, there's a fair amount of references to UBC-only policies and procedures. I encourage you to contact Research Ethics BC if you have questions around your use of PREP or RISE for harmonized research ethics. To access PREP, go to rise.ubc.ca to get to this page and log in. This page is also a gateway to a number of resources, one of which is the link to the RISE sandbox. Here you can do pretend submissions to get a feel for how the real application is structured. Check it out before doing the real thing. To access RISE or PREP, you'll need an account. If you have ever used RISE before, please use that login. If you have multiple affiliations, don't create separate identities. You can just add or change the affiliations within that RISE login. If you need help, contact our team at Research Ethics BC. If you've never had an account in RISE, follow the instructions listed on this slide on how to create an account. Instructions are also available on our website. Note that it is a 3-step process. If you have any difficulties, again, contact us at Research Ethics BC. Now that we know how to access the Harmonized platform, let's do a walkthrough together and I'll highlight some of the important features. I will log into the sandbox environment using the test passwords available. Remember, the RISE environment can be UBC specific and the sandbox is geared towards the UBC section of RISE. So be mindful that if you're a researcher who's not associated with UBC, some things might look slightly different. For example, there won't be a conflict of interest tab or an animal care tab. For our demonstration and learning purposes, all of the essential features will be the same. Your homepage in RISE and PREP is your personalized portal to access all the studies that you are listed on or in charge of. From here, you can navigate to creating a new application, accessing and amending existing applications, and looking over old studies. At any time, you can access your homepage by hitting the dashboard on the upper left corner of any screen. Your dashboard contains a lot of information. My Inbox will have all of the applications on the go or items awaiting attention. To see all of the applications you're involved in, go to the Human Ethics tab. If you want to find a specific application, you can search for it here or from the Studies tab. Use the search bar to look based on study number, PI, or even study title. Closed studies won't show up here though. You can find them through the REB Inactive tab. If we would open this up, we would see that none of the submissions are open or active. They're inactive, terminated, or rejected. Going back to the dashboard, each line represents a study and gives you a high-level summary about that application. In practice, we refer to things slightly differently than how they are listed in the system. For example, ID number is REB number. But this snapshot will have the REB number, the title, the PI, and its stage in the process, i.e., pre-submission, assigned for review, or assigned for harmonized review. This particular application is REB number H22-00034. The title of the application is Branching. It's a human ethics submission. The PI is Prin's Apple, and the state is pre-submission. To create a new application from your homepage, go to the menu on the left-hand side of the screen and select Human Ethics. This will generate a new application and start you on the first page. Complete each section, saving frequently. Use the next arrows or continue arrows to move to the next page. Most fields in the application are open text. Questions with a drop-down menu to select from will have 3 dots. If you ever have any questions, click on the blue question mark to see guidance for any questions that you are unsure of how to answer. Required fields are marked with a red asterisk. Remember to always fill in these questions, as leaving them blank will result in the REB asking you to please specify. Finally, save frequently to avoid losing progress. Our first tip for completing the application is to be fulsome in your answers. It can be tempting to let the REB tell you what they want you to cover, but this ultimately causes unnecessary delays, as the REB will not even have a chance to look at the application until it's completed in full. If you have general application questions, please reach out to us at Research Ethics BC. Otherwise, contact your local ethics office. The first set of questions will be about the research team. Here are a few tips about how to answer this section. Any research team member can create an application on behalf of a PI. But for the most part, students are not able to be PIs for applications. Check your local requirements. If you're creating an application on behalf of a PI, always add yourself to section 1.2 or 1.3 of the application so that you don't lose access. Be purposeful about who has online access to the application. There are multiple boxes where you can add research team members. Some grant access to the application, while others do not. The ones that grant online access are boxes 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4. The remaining boxes grant no online access. If you are being added to an application in progress, reach out to the PI or the primary contact. That's the individual listed in section 1.1 and 1.2 to get yourself and your team onto the application with online access if needed. If the application is already approved, this can be done via an amendment. But first I will need to fill out this application. I'll do that behind the scenes and meet you over in section 4. Section 4 is a critical component of the REBC prep application because it's the driver behind the Harmonized process. It determines the questions that appear on the application as well as who reviews the application and how, i.e. delegated or full board review. Section 4.1 asks whether the study is clinical or behavioral. Within each application type, you can access truncated or shortened forms for specific kinds of research. For example, behavioral applications have a shorter survey application option, while the clinical application has a shorter biospecimens form. There are questions in Section 4 that open these options. For the presentation today, we are assuming you are completing the full application. Behavioral applications are social scientific in nature or involve humanities research. They are not clinical, even though they can include patients, because they don't have invasive procedures. Methods can include interviews, observations, questionnaires, or tests. Clinical applications are those involving surgery, the administration of drugs, medical imaging or other diagnostic techniques, biopsies, the taking of blood or other specimens, the review of clinical medical records, or in any invasive procedure. A clinical research project that also includes questionnaires or interviews should be noted as clinical. We've moved through each of these definitions quickly, but they're also available in the help text. If you click on the guidance notes for this section, you'll have instant access to the definitions to verify when you're completing the application. The next important section for harmonization is the Board of Record Matrix, or Section 4.2d. This helps institutions determine the impact, who else may need to review the information, and which REB is best suited to be the Board of Record. In general, it is important to list each site that the research is taking place at. Let's fill out this section. In this example, Vancouver Island Health Authority has been selected for all of the research activity options. Therefore, Island Health will likely be the Board of Record for this application. The more information that you can accurately represent here, the better chance that your application will get to the right people the first time around. Another important aspect within Section 4 is explaining the level of risk. While the risk determination is ultimately up to the REB, you'll be asked to provide an explanation of why you consider your research minimal or above minimal risk. In order to find out more about how that determination should be made, use the guidance notes. We'll say it's minimal risk. The remaining sections, 5, 6, 7, and 8, contain important information for REB review. We will share some quick tips when filling out these sections, but also check in with the guidance material within the application as well as on the websites of the REBs you're applying for. Our first tip is to fill out these sections in full and don't just copy and paste from the study protocol. Each of these sections asks about information that is generally not written out in enough detail in the study protocol. Let's do some advice for Section 5 first. For Section 5, we wanted to highlight Section 5.4a, Recruitment. Note that personal information cannot be used to contact potential participants for research purposes, unless prior consent is in place. Next, let's do Section 6. Our tip here is for Section 6.6. Reviewers need to see that participant privacy is being respected, and that there's no undue influence on participants. Be sure to address this when you're filling out Section 6.6. Finally, let's do Section 8. Here we wanted to focus on Section 8.5, Data Storage and Access. Ensure that the comprehensive data management plan is outlined. It's important to safeguard the information about research participants. Follow the data storage policies of all institutions involved in the application for digital as well as paper data if you're using it. Finally, in all of these sections, there may be answers that need to be adjusted for local context. For example, if recruitment at SFU is different from UVic, outline each process. If the data storage is slightly different across participating groups, note that as well. The Attachments tab, or page 9 in the application, should include anything that will help the REB and the Ethics Office do their review and ensure that the core principles of respect for persons, concern for welfare, and justice are suitably addressed in the proposed project. We have some tips for this section as well. For consent forms, use the templates available. Consent forms for the general public should be at an appropriate reading level, with technical terms defined. Use 3 acronyms maximum. Good practice is to seek feedback on drafts from the target population. For standardized assessments, or 9.6, we wanted to highlight that where possible, replace name with study ID and date of birth with age. For all supporting documents, avoid administrative provisos by checking for consistency across the application, protocol, consent forms, and recruitment material. Don't forget to upload all supporting documents the first time around. Asking for supporting documents is a common administrative proviso that holds up research ethics applications. If replacing documents, always update the version date. Finally, when you're uploading a document, RISE Prep will ask for the name, version number, and version date of the document. All of these will end up on the certificate of approval. This information cannot be edited by ethics staff and needs to be consistent across the application, the document, and the certificate of approval. So it's essential that you enter this information correctly and consistently. That's it for the demo, and I'll meet you back on the presentation slides. In creating your application, there are templates available in a variety of places. But we recommend that you use the templates for consent, letters of contact, and even protocols that are available from the organization while you will be conducting your research. The use of logos is primarily to recognize that the research is multi-jurisdictional, as well as having been approved ethically and operationally. Please include them on any documentation that will be seen by the research participant. Asking research teams to add logos is one of the most common harmonized provisos, preventing institutions from accepting direct reciprocity. Each health authority has their own operational approval process. Section 11 of the RISE Prep application appears when health authorities are selected as partner institutions in Section 4, the one we mentioned that was critical and discussed in detail. The more health authorities that are involved in the study, the more pages in Section 11 there are. In order to conduct research that is under health authority auspices, even minimal risk research may require that there is an appropriate level of authorization. This process is independent from ethics review. Section 11 is only a starting point. Between home REB platforms, the RISE Prep platform, and the separate operational approval applications, there's a lot to balance. We've summarized the 2 streams here. Always start with consulting about if your project requires multi-jurisdictional review. If not, submit only to your local REB through the normal channels. If the study requires review under the Harmonized model, submit to all of the REBs involved through the PREP component of RISE. Do not duplicate your application, as your home REB will have full access to the application in PREP. And as we saw with the page 11 slide just before this, operational approval may be required as well. When involving a health authority, the recommendation is to make contact to start the operational approvals before submitting your research ethics application. This can help streamline approval timelines. And remember, there may be multiple operational approvals depending on the study. Use the Research Ethics BC operational contacts list for connecting to the different departments across the health authorities. For all studies, including clinical trials, reporting of safety events or unexpected events should always be done according to the requirements for the Board of Record institution. So for example, if the lead is Fraser Health, then follow Fraser Health's guidance. In all cases, The PI for the study will need to submit the post-approval activities. If your location is not the main site for the study, you can still start the post-approval activity if you have access to the PrEP application, but you'll still need the overall PI to click the Submit button. So work with the primary contact of the study, the individual listed in Section 1.2 of the application, to coordinate the submission of the PAA. Requests for acknowledgements and amendments are two types of post-approval activities, or PAAs. You can have multiple drafts of post-approval activities open at one time. This is to allow study teams to try to update applications with new procedures while also submitting an SAE as soon as it comes in. But not all post-approval activities can be open and submitted simultaneously, and you can't have multiples open at a time. There are some limitations around starting a closure application to close out a research ethics application. Because a closure ends a study, it cannot be opened at the same time as a renewal, which is intended to keep the study open, or an amendment. This slide is a screenshot of what it looks like when you start a new PAA and already have a few in progress. The other PAAs will be listed at the top of the PAA cover sheet with hyperlinks so you can jump right to them. So here we have a request for acknowledgement as well as an annual renewal started at the same time. Shifting focus, here we have an example of a certificate of approval from the Harmonized Research Ethics Review process. This certificate is only for Harmonized ethics reviews. For Harmonized studies, the REBs involved in the review and/or who are part of the ethics approval are included on the certificate of approval. For this application, it has ethics approval from UNBC, Northern Health, and BC Cancer. The letter also lists the type of letter, so for example, approved for a minimal risk behavioral study, the PI, the ethics application number, as well as the approval dates. Not pictured here, the certificate also lists all of the approved study documents. Research Ethics BC is here to help. We provide templates, guidance documents, links to resources, educational events, videos, and we're also here for your one-to-one application support. Again, this is a UBC system, and there's a fair amount of reference to UBC-only policies and procedures. I encourage you to contact Research Ethics BC if you have any questions around your use of RISE or PrEP for Harmonized Research Ethics. Use Research Ethics BC resources in conjunction with your institution-specific resources. You will have a lot of support for ethics applications between the resources available at your institution, Research Ethics BC resources, and Research Ethics BC on speed dial. If your impression from this slide is that there's a lot of information available, then you're right. But speaking of speed dial, let's keep in touch. Email us at researchethicsbc@healthresearchbc.ca. One of us will be happy to field your question and get you off to the races. Thank you again for joining us, and best of luck with your study.